course, lack of, for the reasons which I gave earlier on, which is that before 1998, security agencies were operating in silos. The police will do their work as police. And even the police, you'll have administration police, you have the regular police, and they have no critical relationship. You have the DCI, that time known as CID, but they have no relationship with NIS. So information perhaps which could be in the hands of NIS, there was no framework to have it shared across board to enable the police of any formation or any other agency to act. And that has been resolved, as I am going to demonstrate in a short while. Honorable Chair, therefore, the following challenges emerged, or rather in terms of collateral damage. What has happened is the loss of lives, which are irreplaceable, loss of livelihoods to many families, some of whom are represented in this chamber today, destruction of infrastructure, many buildings were destroyed, including Ufundi Cooperative House, Mwalimu Cooperative House, the US Embassy itself, and many other buildings and infrastructural facilities. The friendship between Kenya and US in the handling of the incident made us even greater enemies to the threat of terror. And in the succeeding years, this has been demonstrated. We have experienced other attacks later, because it became clear during this crisis that it is true we were clear friends of the United States of America, and unapologetically so, and I believe that is the position until today. But that demonstration of our fraternal relationship between our two countries made us even greater targets of the threat of terror in the years to come. And lastly, of course, that Kenya in 1998 was propelled to the international terrorism scene, resulting to loss of business, particularly in the tourism sector. I think from that time, our tourism sector went south and has never recovered again, because unlike before, it became clear to foreigners that Kenya is a prime target of a terror attack. What interventions, policy, legislative, have we done as a ministry over the years to learn from this unfortunate experience, to make the country safer and to make sure that this does not occur again? As I have said, the institutional building first. Now we have the anti-terror police unit. It continues to do a great job every day. Hundreds of terror threats have been thwarted in the last 25 years, 27 years. There has been tremendous successes, notwithstanding the few instances where terrorists have been able to hurt us after the 1998. The establishment of the anti-terror police unit, the establishment of the National Counter-Terrorism Center, the establishment of the Financial Reporting Center has been critical. Chair, the Financial Reporting Center helps us to track the inflows of finances into our financial system. And we've been able through the Financial Reporting Center to detect funds or resources which we believed would have been used to finance terror, and under the law, both national and international, those funds are forfeited. Of those finances. We have established the Coast Guard to enhance our surveillance of Kenya's internal waters and territorial seas to avoid terrorists using the oceans from approaching the territory of our country. Chair, we have established a transnational organized crime unit, which, among other things, deals with the prevention of terror, and we have established the Asset Recovery Agency, so that when we freeze finances which are destined to finance terror, they are forfeited. And the agency that is the recipient of forfeited funds is the Asset Recovery Agency. And therefore, in a nutshell, through institutional building, we have made our homeland better prepared to prevent a recurrence of the sad and devastating we had in 1998. Number two, we have improved on our border control. Before 1998, the border control system was weak. As a result of this attack, we put in place a system known as PCS, which means Personal Identification Secure Comparison and Evaluating System. Personal Identification Secure Comparison and Evaluating System, PCS, which has served the country well for more than 20 years. However, experienced some attacks. In 2014, in Westgate, 2013, 2014. Thereafter, 2015, Garissa University. Thereafter, in 2019, Dusit, with various numbers of casualties. What we have done in border control, therefore, is that we are reviewing the system, the PCS system, and we are replacing it with a new, more technologically advanced system known as Advanced Passenger Information / Passenger Record System, API / PNR. This system, we hope will be able to, and this system will enable immigration officers and border control officers and law enforcement agencies, including our intelligence service, to profile passengers journeys into Kenya from their country of origin. The moment a person starts a journey to travel to Kenya from whatever country, our agencies are aware what kind of person it is, whether he's on the red list of suspected criminals, and we can decide either to prevent them from traveling to Kenya, or once we profile them as dangerous or passengers suspected to be dangerous criminals, we allow them to travel, immobilize them so that they can help us with more information on what their intentions were and who else they were in cohorts with. So that decision, therefore, is left for us. Once we profile the person in advance, we can decide either to prevent them from entering the territory, or they come when we are aware what kind of people they are, and when we are prepared to immobilize them immediately they enter the territory of Kenya for purposes of interrogation. The API / PNR system will greatly move this country to a different level in terms of border management control. We hope this financial year we'll be able to install that system to develop all pieces. Other than Honorable Chair, we have that is the Proceeds of Crime and Anti-Money Laundering Act. And these are very useful laws. The Proceeds of Crime and Anti-Money Laundering Act is what enables us to track proceeds of crime and the financials of terror, and be able to intercept, freeze, and disable the financing of terror. because the engine of terror is money. If you remove money from terrorism, ideology and radicalization without money cannot cause the kind of damages that we see. There must be money. So if this act has helped us. In fact, we amended it last month to make it even more difficult for financiers of terror to transport and convey resources across the world, especially into our country, to hurt us. The Prevention of Terrorism Act of 2012, game-changing legislation. It has helped us to deal with the suspects of terror differently from other suspects of other crimes. Because before that time, security agencies would arrest a terror suspect, but you have to produce that terror suspect in court within 24 hours, because that was the law says, whether the investigations are complete or not. And given the complexity of terror, agencies require a little more time, because it has international network. It has so many complications, and therefore through this Prevention of Terrorism Act, we are able to hold suspects longer, up to 360 days for 1 year. And this is what we have applied to, and it has helped us big time. Of course, we produce them to courts occasionally for purposes of accountability. The courts themselves have been gracious. They have set up the anti-terror court, where terror-related issues are processed by the judiciary outside the normal judicial processes, and this has really helped in the fight against terror. And it's a democratic thing, Chair. That's what happens in all countries. Once somebody is profiled within the realms of terror, they are treated differently in all the countries, including the longest democracies of the world. We have also enacted the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act of 2018. We have amended the Anti-Narcotics Act. We have amended the Refugees Act. We have amended the NGOs Act. And we have the game-changing legal amendments in the fight against terror was the controversial Security Laws Amendment Act of 2014. Because this is the amendment that, first of all, compelled for the first time security agencies, whether they are internal security organs or the defense forces, to work together in a multi-agency form, develop common standard operating procedures, share intelligence, work together to deal with terror, as opposed to in the past when agencies were in silos and sometimes working in competition with each other. So we're in good space. We continue to improve on the law to make sure that the country is safer and safer, and we are learning from the best jurisdictions of the world how to balance democracy on one hand, human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, and the right to presume suspects innocent, but on the other hand, to be able to have a grip on national security and make it a serious matter which requires special treatment of those who threaten the security of our homeland. We have amended the Firearms Act, Cap 114, to control the influence of small arms and light weapons, and the Kenya Citizenship and Immigration Act has also been amended to make it a bit difficult for foreign nationals to access our country and cause us harm if they are not good people. We have international collaboration on the fight against terror. We have enhanced information sharing mechanisms. We have enhanced financial regulation by the Central Bank of Kenya, and we have deployed financial regulation. We have deployed modern technology in policing, including the use of the Integrated Command Center IC3 to monitor our major urban spaces and critical infrastructure like the ferry on a minute-by-minute basis. The Inspector General is able to monitor what is happening critical spaces in major urban areas and major infrastructure on a minute-by-minute basis. On this to make sure that the country is safer than it is now. Finally, Chair and members and all the stakeholders present today, even with these measures, the threat of terror remains alive, not just in Kenya, but in many countries of the world, especially countries that with the institutional and legal adjustments, amendments, and improvements, we must consciously sensitize members of the public and all people who live in this country that the threat of terror remains real, and we must always be alert and conscious. Number two, in my closing remarks, is to say that I am proud of the effort our security officers have put to defend the country from the threat of terror. Many have paid the price of this defense of the country with their lives. Others have been maimed. As we speak, in northern Kenya, where we've had incidents, a bit of Lamu, we have lost officers. Others have been injured significantly as they try and keep terror at bay. And therefore, it's a good occasion to salute the work of our security agencies, especially the special police units and the multi-agency teams on counter-terrorism that were put in place. And finally, in my closing remark, is to say, from where I sit, the 1998 bomb blast in Nairobi, which was also extended to the US Embassy in Dar es Salaam, perhaps to create diversionary consequence. That attack will remain in the history of our country as one of the worst attacks to have happened on our soil. And this attack, even if we have given some reasons why we believe it occurred, at the root of that attack was the friendship of Kenya with our traditional ally, the United States of America. From where I sit, therefore, I believe what this committee is doing is good for the country and for the world, and for our continued friendship with the United States of America. Unfortunately, the American citizens who lost or suffered in whatever other way as a result of this attack were compensated. From where we sit, and as the country's security minister, it is our view that what this committee is doing is a good thing, and we're in total support with the of Kenyans who lost their loved ones, who were injured or suffered damage or loss during this attack, in the compensation scheme, because that attack was not directed at Kenya and Kenyans for their sake. It was directed at Kenya and Kenyans because of our friendship, our hosting, and our standing with the United States of America and their interests. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. CS, for that elaborate speech, and I would want to call upon the victims to have just 5 minutes to say something before I invite the senators to ask questions to the CS. And before they speak, Mr. Mondigi, Senator, can you come on record? Senator.
Good afternoon. My name is Alexander Mondigi, Senator for Embu County, Committee Member.
And welcome. Lillian, 5 minutes, because we don't have a lot of time.
Thank you. Thank you, our CS. And thank you for the good job that you're doing to ensure that we are safe as Kenyans. And everyone here will just speak briefly. Mine is just to highlight to you that my son was born that time, and even the mothers of the silent survivors, the children are now 25 years old. And the orphans who are also born that time, and those who are actually young, are a very vulnerable age, at a very vulnerable age whereby, out of the anger that they go through, they can easily be radicalized. So my request is that you can sit down with your committee and see what you can do to help us bring up people of integrity in this nation, because as I said, they're very vulnerable, and anything small can trigger them being taken to the other side and become an enemy of the nation. Thank you very much. I will allow my sister here, Grace, to speak on behalf of the orphans briefly, very briefly, kindly.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Honorable CS. For us as orphans, we appreciate the work that you're doing in terms of fast-tracking the passports for us. We are looking for employment. Most of us don't have jobs, so they're trying to see if you can get jobs outside the country. So we appreciate, and we ask that your office continues to fast-track that so that you can be able to get our passports. And as Lillian has spoken, I think there are so many vulnerable orphans. Things went haywire since they lost our parents, and most of them don't have jobs. They have so many idle time, so they engage in illegal acts, alcoholism, drug abuse. So all this is affecting all the orphans. Please have your committee look at it and how we can be able to support the orphans. Thank you.
I had 3 questions for you today as a widow of the 1998 bomb blast, but I'm happy because what you have read there, it answers some of my questions. But I'll go with 2 questions. One, what is the position of the Kenya government on the terrorism fund which was set aside to assist the victims of terror attacks since 1998 bombing? That's the first question. And finally, Bwana CS, is there plans to compensate the victim of 1998 bombing through the terrorism fund set aside for compensation by the government of Kenya? We are so proud that this time our government is up to assist us in finding justice since 1998. Thank you.
Bwana CS, through the chair of the ad hoc committee and the secretariat, mine is just a question, or rather I have a request that like my colleague here has asked about the passports. We would humbly ask through your capacity as the CS for Interior and National Administration, whether through your office we could get passports, the committee and the other survivors, because once in a while you find that there is exchange of the victims, like let's say like America, where you have Oklahoma bombing and the 9/11 bombing also. So if there could be a facilitation through your office, this could be a big help to us, even for the survivors, for the orphans, for all the others. We ask that from your office. Thank you so much. Thank you. My name is Judge Kindiki. Can you please distribute this to the senator and It is a one-page, this is a one-page letter from the Ministry of Coordination. After 17 years of and to the CS, our honorable CS.
Continue, Kindiki, you have no time.
Yes. I want to read that letter, which was written in 2015 as an answer to our request for assistance from our Kenya government and compensation. This is from the office of the President, Minister of Interior, to George Ngigi, Chairman of the 7th August 1998 Bomb Blast Association, and that was in June 2015. The 7th August Bomb Blast Victims Compensation. We acknowledge receipt of your letter dated 5th March 2014 and the subsequent reminder of the same dated 2015. Here I think you can mark from, that is 1 year, and there have been subsequent reminders which is not noted. We wish to inform you that your request to the government to provide the victims of the 1998 American Embassy bomb blast compensation or assistance has been receiving attention, and efforts have been made to find ways by which your request may be met. The ministry sought from the Attorney General legal advice on how best government may deal with the nature of obligations towards victims of the terrorist bombing of the American Embassy in Nairobi. To have the victims. We inform you that the Attorney General has given the legal advice which calls for further processing of your request through other ministries and departments before a specific response may be given to you. We therefore intend to arrange for further consultations with the relevant authorities to determine what and the nature of action may be taken to assist the victims of the American Embassy bombings. We will revert. There I can say they have never reverted. And here, Mheshimiwa Bwana CS, I've seen you have talked about Porter. This Porter, I had complained to the Commission on Administrative Justice, and then your response. There was a response from the Interior. They said, on the other hand, the Kenya Parliament has passed the Prevention of Terrorism Act. That is what I see. It is Porter. Number 30 of 2012, which has created a compensation for victims of terrorism fund under Section 49, which provides that the Cabinet Secretary for the time for matters relating to internal security shall make regulations to you as the CS have made regulations to provide for the management and administration of the fund, because in your answer responses, you have just only talked about security, dealt with the victims. You see, when terrorists attack and victims are killed or what, that is victory for the terrorists. But when the victims are compensated or assisted, that the terrorists can see they have done nothing. My Professor Kindiki, please, with those few questions, thank you.
Thank you very much. I now invite the senators to, if they have any questions or any comments to make. Very briefly. We have Banasis, you have how many minutes to give us, to ask questions and you respond?
20 or inclusive, Chair.
Thank you.
Respectively.
Thank you.
Yeah.
20 minutes. Let's give it.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I want to thank the CS and Senator for the presentation before this committee. One, in your presentation, of course, there is the issue of the perpetrators acquiring Kenyan identity facilitated by the public officers. Of course, that is regrettable, but we hope that you're doing so much, flashing back into the past few weeks, the efforts you've made at the immigration, that is an issue that will be dealt with going forward. Honorable the CS, it is also notable that some of these intrusions also came through charitable organizations. And that was not detected, of course, regrettable. But 25 years after that, CS, we also see not an act of terror, but we saw right in the village in Kilifi, such activities, again, not terror, but a criminal activity in the name of Shakahola. And it is regrettable that that was not detected. That is 25 years after a similar was not detected, and we saw the consequences of that. I hope as we plan for the coverage on urban centers, as a ministry, you do not also focus on the rural areas because of emerging trends of criminals and criminality. That is regrettable also. CS, those may not be questions, but you can comment on them. But as a Senate committee, we are looking forward to ensuring that Kenyans that lost their lives, Kenyans that lost opportunities, that were injured, some of them that are with us, if you are, we can say from the time this committee came into place, we have had very painful experiences listening to the testimony of Kenyans that were affected by the bomb blast, and we hope we will facilitate their compensation. Honorable Speaker, Honorable Chair, those were just comments. The CS can comment on them, but it is regrettable that 25 years we are also dealing with a massacre of that level at Shakahola. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yangu ni kwa Bwana Waziri wa Ulinzi. Profesa, tumekuwa na watu wengi wamekuwa miaka mingi wakitumia mambo ya ulinzi. Wengi wamekuwa wakitumia kifua, wengi wamekuwa wakitumia hata kusikia wakipiga nguvu, na tunaona pia wanaenda magari mingi sana wakitembea juu ya ulinzi. Lakini kwa wewe tunasikia unaitwa profesa na umetumia uprofesa wako juu ya elimu na kufanya kazi nzuri kwa kipindi ya mwaka mmoja. Yale umenena ni mazuri, na pia nchi ya Kenya tumehudhuria, hata serikali za ng'ambo imehudhuria. Na tunapiga na rapa stamp kwa sababu tuliona stima ilipotea 24 hours. Na usiku hiyo yote hakuna wakati tulisikia kama kuna mambo ya wizi ama mambo ya mauaji ama mambo ambayo ya kuharibu. Kwa hivyo hiyo ni kitu moja tuliona kazi yako ni nzuri. Mambo ya pili, umezunguka Kenya yote isipokuwa ni kaunti ndogo, siku na vita kwa mpaka
Kama Northeastern mambo tumesikia ukisifiwa, na upande mwingine tumesikia ukisifiwa, hiyo ni kazi nzuri. Na pia umetuambia ile kazi unafanya ndio ulinzi wa Kenya uweze kuendelea vizuri. Kitu ya pili nataka nikuambie, wakati mtu amelala usiku na mchana, huwa saa nyingine anaweza kuwa anaweza kufurahia, lakini nataka nikuombe tu, hata kama umefanya hiyo kazi yote, maadui ni wengi, na saa hiyo uko mbele ukikimbia vile utatulinda. Pia unjue kuna watu walivu wengi katika nchi ya Kenya, pia wanakuangalia usiku na mchana. Kwa hiyo nakuomba, hata kama unasaidia Kenya, endelea kuwa hiyo uprofesa wako, uendelee kuleta machini nyingi ya kuangalia ni nini inaweza kuharibu Kenya. Ya pili ya mwisho ni kuwa bwana waziri, hao watu waliumia kwa kipindi ya miaka 25. Na hiyo profesa wako unaweza kusaidia hao watu waweze kupata pesa zao, ufanye upelelezi na njia yako ile utatumia uwe na uwerevu kama ilikuwa na Solomon, hao watu waweze kupata haki yako. Kwa sababu ukiwa tukikuita tunahitaji wewe na tunajua utatusaidia. Tumeita waziri wengi, waziri wa health wamekwambia watatusaidia, waziri wa lipa watatusaidia. Sasa ile mahali imebakia ni yako, na tuko na hakika utatupa nguvu. Hata pa recommendation yako tukienda ng'ambo kukutana wale wazungu, pia utakuwa umejaribu kufanya intelligent, usikie kama pesa ilitolewa silienda wapi. Kwa hiyo nakuomba bwana waziri utusaidie vile watu watapata haki yao, pia ukifanya kazi ambaye ni ya Kenya. Na tunakwambia umefanya kazi nzuri na hatuwezi kusaidia wewe, lakini Mungu tunajua siku moja atakulipa.
Thank you, Senator Mondiki. Lakini just to correct you, hakuna watu walilipwa. We are still demanding
parasia person. Kuna semekana, ngoja kidogo, parasia person sio watu walilipwa. Kuna pesa ilisemekana ilitoka ikaenda kwa account huko ng'ambo, na ndizo tunafuata.
Oh, the terrorist fund. Yes. Oh, okay. Chairperson, Vice Chair, sorry.
Thank you very much, Chair. First, thank you very much, Professor Kindiki, CS for Interior, for honoring our appearance to this committee, and of course to appear in our own house, the Senate. Now, I have very few questions, Honorable CS. One, Kenya is still a strong ally and a friend to America, and even our foreign affairs policy now seems to be leaning to America. We were attacked on that basis. We are also seeing an increase in attacks around Lamu and Mandera in the country. We also want to believe is because of the same accusation. Now, what measures has Kenya government put in place to ensure that we don't suffer any more attacks on this? And what assistance in terms of collaborations with the US government is Kenya receiving for these acts that may not necessarily have been directed to Kenyans, but arising as a result of our relationship to America? Number two, there are a number of NGOs and CBOs and CSOs that were associated with aiding the process of that attack. Were those organizations registered? Were the directors or those who are concerned with those organizations charged in a court of law? And if so, what was the outcome? USA compensated Americans who are working in the embassy and Kenyans who are working in the embassy, and excluded the rest without compensation. We know America as a champion of human rights. And we just want to know whether there has been engagements from government with engagement by Kenyan government to American government with a view of compensating the rest of the Kenyans who are not compensated. Finally, CS, these terrorists acquired Kenya government what I would call security documents, because identification documents are essentially security documents. You see, the officers were arrested. Were they charged in a court of law? Were they sentenced? Or what was the outcome? So that we are able to deal with that matter.
Thank you.
Finally, CS, allow me, Chair, to ask one very sensitive, not sensitive really, but I would say political. Now, the Terrorism Act, Honorable CS, gives immense power to the state to hold suspects more than about 365 days or so, for more days than the usual provisions that we have to be produced in court. Isn't this law open to abuse by the state, particularly when the state is politically motivated? And I say this because I saw in the last regime, one of my former colleague governors, the governor of Nairobi, Kithure, was charged with terrorism. And I've looked at the offenses under those terrorism. Well, it can be my perception, but I don't see a situation where Gideon Mike Bubi Songo was aiding terrorists. Would this not be open to political abuse? And what are the limitations that will make sure that this law is applied in a manner that is fair and for the sole purpose of deterring terrorism in the country? Whereas we appreciate that the law is necessary equally to deter terrorists. And we know police officers in the past have had serious issues. When you arrest, you know, suspects that you have investigated, you have tracked for a very long period of time, got some evidence, and then they are just released on flimsy grounds on, you know, a bond of 3,000. And then the fellow is asked to, you know, to show up after 6 months, and after 6 months the guy has fled the country. We are not able, so we appreciate what the law is doing, but what is going to happen with abuse? And finally, CS, investigations in this country rely on the presence of the DCI officers. We know that the workforce in the DCI is probably below 7,000. We have police stations in this country that don't have DCI units. What plans does the ministry have? One, to increase the number of DCI officers so that the workload and the investigation can be speeded up, so that such acts of terrorism can then be addressed within a short time. Investigations can be completed. And two, do the ministry have any plans of really making DCI a completely independent unit, and be it given their own budgetary provision so that they are able to conduct their work? And are there any plans in your ministry to increase the number of officers in the specialized units? And we appreciate that the specialized units are doing a very beautiful job. One of the units that is doing a fantastic job is the homicide unit. But that unit is staffed with very, very few officers, and the whole nation is running after the few officers. Are there any plans to increase the workforce in this specialized unit, because we have seen them produce results within a very short time? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. CS, mine are very few, and it's about the Section 49 of the Terrorist Fund of 2012. Are there regulations provided for this compensation fund, and has it benefited these terrorists, these victims in any way of the terrorists of bomb blast 1998? But CS, also you've mentioned that life is irreplaceable. We do agree, but people do get compensation so that at least they can heal even if life, we cannot replace life, definitely, but people can be compensated. Those who died, they have their next of kins, and those who are alive can also be compensated. And just like the rest of the senators, has these officers who were corrupt and enable these terrorists to own identities, identity cards for Kenya. Have they been arrested and have they been taken to court of law? Have they been jailed or fined? What was done? Again, Bonasias, if we read the then ambassador, Prudence Bushnell, she wrote this book. And this book has every information that Kenya needs, especially your ministry, to counter the Americans, because she says she states very clearly here that she was aware that they were going to be attacked, and she never reported to the Kenyan government that there was danger. And again, the embassy being in the center of the CBD, and if they knew that, they would have moved it out of the CBD, we would not have lost as many lives as we have. And so I think through the information that is written in this book, and this ambassador is still alive and she can bear witness of what she wrote, I think you can help us follow up the compensation. And again, we are not asking Americans for too much. Americans are our friends, and they are human rights defenders. Here are Kenyans who lost their lives, who are hurt, and are living vulnerable lives without, some of them can't even put food on their tables. Mr. Sayers, in your capacity, and the Kenyan government, can you kindly assist us to pursue this together in unity, so that we can deliver the compensation that we are fighting for and we are looking for? Because that money in this fund is from terrorists, just as you have explained. We are not asking for Americans' money, but this fund is there and it is meant to compensate such people. Kenyans took their bullets, and so they should be the big brother and do the right thing. We are not asking for much. Bonasias, can you help us also in this? We've also spoken to the CS Foreign Affairs and Diaspora Ministry. We've also communicated with the ambassador in the US, Kenyan ambassador in US. We need appointment to meet with the Senate there. And if we put our efforts together, we'll be able to do this. And once we sit down with them, I am sure they will see the need. And they will believe that they've not compensated. Because through the compensation that they did for the people who are working for the American embassy, they believe that they compensated all Kenyans, which is not true. The rest of them were not compensated, only the people who are working for them. Thank you, Bonasias.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, with regard to the issues that have been raised, many of them are comments and proposals. A few are direct questions. I'll try and summarize because of the constraints we have. And just for the members, Chair, I'm not rushing out of Parliament. I'm still within Parliament, but I'm appearing before another committee, the National Assembly Committee on Internal Security. So I really respect this process, and I hope we can have more engagement even after you travel to America and come back. It doesn't have to be in this format. It can be in a workshop format or some debriefing format, because the issues you're pursuing are weighty, and they will define how, going forward, those of us who get unlucky and unfortunate to experience the kind of horror
that the victims of this attack experience are treated differently. And I think that is what this committee and all of us from wherever we are owe the future and all the victims and their descendants. With regard to the broad issues around compensation, my understanding is that the American authorities have argued in the past that with regard to compensation for terror attacks, their law does not allow non-American citizens to get compensated. But I think an argument can be made around it, because those Kenyans who were killed, maimed, including some whose families are represented here, would not have been killed. The terrorists had no reason to hurt those people. And I dare say Kenya would not have been hurt at all. We were hurt because we were hosting an American embassy, and the target was America and its embassy. In the process, collateral damage, we lost lives and we got maimed, our people got maimed. So an argument can be made, and I wish you well, and I want to pledge my support and the support of the ministry and of government in this administration to make sure that this matter is given the impetus, the support, and the vigor of government until it is resolved. That's number one.
Mr. CS, just point of information, we have lawyers in the US who have already sued in the US, and they've already been awarded compensation, but they have nowhere to draw that fund. That's why we are insisting to meet with the Senate in the US so that they can amend the law and include Kenya to be eligible to the compensation fund so that our people can be compensated. And actually, all of them have I-95. Even those who have no ruling have I-95 form, which includes them for compensation.
Thank you. That's good information. Thank you, Chair. I appreciate, and I think what I see therefore as the work of this committee is to help the government to connect the dots. And have this matter resolved. But from where I sit, I think this is a time to bring this pain to some manageable end. I think the relationship between Kenya and the US are at their best, luckily for us at the moment, and therefore help us to connect the dots and bring this matter to conclusion. The people who aided these horrible criminals were, the public servants were dismissed from service and they were prosecuted, but at this time the Prevention of Terrorism Act was not in place. So their treatment was lenient treatment because the law that time had not envisaged the gravity of terror. And though I think that is what happened. In terms of the organizations which were involved, they were deregistered. And that loophole is what we have closed now by amending the law related to charitable organizations and NGOs. And I think going forward, I think Cabinet is soon going to consider even new laws in that space on NGOs, because a lot of money is channeled through NGOs, and many NGOs and charitable organizations do a wonderful job to partner with government to develop our country. However, that is a space also which has been misused, and we're going to be extremely strict with the resources in that space to make sure that only resources that are targeted to helping the country get their way here. Chair, with regard to strengthening the loopholes in the acquisition of identity documents, we have made some progress, but we are not there yet. We have a lot of work to do. I want to assure the committee and the country a Kenyan passport, and that for the third generation ID in its various forms, and also reforms in the immigration department which are underway, and we are now at 10% of what we intend to see in that space. So we will change that place. We will remove all manner of crooks in the supply chain and the pipeline of delivery of identity documents. And just to report to this committee that last weekend we arrested 17 criminals, suspected criminals who have been frustrating the country with the passport issues. And unfortunately, out of the 17 arrests, 7 are public officials working for the Department of Immigration. Others, of course, are brokers, and we will not spare anybody, because unless we clean our identity issuance system and make it impossible to forge or misuse that system, our homeland is not safe. So we are tracking other suspects, and without preempting investigations, we are targeting senior government officials who may, we have reasons to believe, have been colluding with people who don't mean well for our country, and they have made it possible for the wrong people to access the Kenyan passport. Number 3, a request has been made for us to fast track any of the victims or their families associated with the 1998 attack who may want to travel but do not have passports. I want to commit before you, Chair, that if there are any of the victims or their families or persons associated with this incident who are looking for passports, let the list be forwarded to my office. We will issue those passports in an express manner. We will treat them the way we are treating other express requests, because it is already a horrible thing that the victims had to go what they went through in 1998. It's even greater if they cannot travel, even for purposes of consolation and mingling with other victims and trying to get over the situation simply because they don't have a travel document. So we'll issue all of them in record time, within a day or two. Once, of course, we do our checks so that, again, we don't have people pretending or masquerading as victims while they are not. Number 5, I accept the assessment which has been done that what happened in Shakahola was also a lapse on intelligence. I have called publicly about it. And we are not taking what happened in Shakahola lightly. that matter will change the way we handle Kenya. And I agree with the recommendation that the threats that we face in our homeland today are not restricted to the urban space. Danger lurks everywhere, even in our rural areas. And Shakahola should never happen again. And those who ought to have done anything and they didn't do, or those who did something that ended up supporting the success of that terror in Shakahola, their day of accountability is coming. We have not even charged anybody up to now. We have not charged a single person. We are processing the main suspect, but we have not charged him. We will charge him. And I want to appeal for patience, because accountability for this kind of crimes is slow, is complex, and it should never go wrong. And one of the ways of ensuring that it doesn't go wrong is to making sure by the time we charge the prime movers of the massacre, the evidence we have must nail them. And I have made it clear, we cannot bungle the Shakahola prosecution. We must get it right, just as the cases for genocide and crimes against humanity. So, that's where we are. Of course, we expected by now the Commission of Inquiry would have helped us process some of those things that the public would require processing. But we are a democracy, and therefore the courts put on hold that process. We are waiting for the cases to be dispensed. Then we continue with the Judicial Commission of Inquiry, which had been established in December by the President. I accept the proposal and recommendation that we should relook at Section 49 afresh and operationalize it. In the same vein, Chair, I want to commit to you and to the victims that I will take up that proposal to look at what we need to do under that section of the Prevention of Terrorism Act to operationalize some way of support to victims of terror, and I see no reason of even a retroactive application of that law, because terror is a grave offense. Even when it comes to the accountability for terror, there is no statute of limitations. You can backdate accountability. So in the same way, you can also backdate the benefits that accrue from trying to settle accounts around terror. I am willing to look at that section and operationalize it even in a retroactive manner. And number two, look for ways of making sure that we have a fund as a country, as much as we believe on this occasion that our friends, the United States of America, owes the victims of 1998 compensation. But also as a country, we also owe the victims of 1998 some form of support, because even if they were hurt as collateral, incidental to an attack on our American friends, the attacks still happen in our homeland, and these are people who are citizens of our country and our homeland. And therefore, Section 49 is an assignment that I want to take. And generally, Chair, in the interest of time, I am willing to, or rather, I am willing to go to whatever length to implement the recommendations that will come from your committee, as a way of saying that the goodwill of this administration to bring this matter to closure is deliberate. I think other than that, there were perhaps a few other issues that were raised by the Senator for Singishu, the Honorable Senator Mandago, and I just want to respond to one or two in the interest of time and say that I agree. We need to relook at the DCI, especially the very critical departments of DCI, which require to be strengthened. Shakahola has helped us understand that our country has huge institutional capabilities. The investigations that are going on around Shakahola have been spearheaded by our homicide unit of the DCI without a single input from a foreign agency. I have been in that space for some months now. I have visited that space for more than a dozen times. They are using international standards and manuals of recovery and processing of mass graves. Very scientific, very professional, very detailed, but there are few. The funding is not as much, and so I agree. And for the comfort of Senator Mandago and the committee, I can report without preempting the report of the task force on police reforms that part of the recommendations in the interim report that has been submitted by the task force on police reforms is to strengthen the DCI, give it broader autonomy in terms of resources, increase the numbers, and give them decisional autonomy as one of the major services of the National Police Service to complement the Kenya Police Service and the Administration Police Service. Finally, is that the recommendations that were done by the former ambassador of the US is something again that we want to follow up, and therefore even if this committee chair is a ad hoc committee, I am hoping that when you file your report there should be some form of continuity so that between the executive and the Senate we can be able to work together to make sure that we realize the recommendations that you will be bringing as we carry this matter forward. The final remark, I want to promise that at the very minimum we shall be able to operationalize the support system for victims of terror attack using the current law, and even if it means improving the current law to be able to put in place the system of supporting our countrymen and women who find themselves in the hands of evil terrorists. And we'll figure out where we'll get resources from. We already have some ideas, even as we've been speaking, we've already have some ideas where we'll get resources from to make sure there's some form of support for people who are unfortunate to fall in the hands of terrorists. Thank you.
Thank you, Bwana CS, for making time for us. And because this book is very rare, I'll give you this copy. I want you to get the information in this book because I know you will help this other committee through the information in this book.
because that's your line and it concerns you. I think we are really grateful to you, and we won't hold you any longer because you're going to that other meeting. There being no other business, this meeting stands adjourned until other correspondence. Watu wa media, asanteni sana. Vile tu tunawaambia kila siku, magnify this thing very much because we want it to go everywhere. We want this, what we have spoken here today, we want it everywhere, so that even the Americans will hear from wherever they are, and they know that we are not giving up. We are not leaving any stone unturned until we get compensation for our people. Thank you very much, and God bless us.
Na hii shida na aibu ya uhalifu na kutojali sheria.
We have to work hard so that we can justify the faith, the commitment, the sacrifice.